Welcome to the Mid-Ohio Valley Public Forum video podcast. This podcast features issues of information and interest to the residents of the Mid-Ohio Valley area. The coronavirus pandemic has changed civic life greatly throughout our country.
This is an election year, and one of the big changes is that candidates cannot run for office and campaign the way they normally would. Generally, this time of year, they'd be attending fairs and festivals, knocking on doors, meeting and greeting the voters and shaking hands and kissing babies. They can't do any of that.
So many of our initial podcasts will be interviews with candidates for local and state offices. If you're a candidate and you're interested in being interviewed, you can reach out to us through our Facebook page at MOV Public Forum or via email, movpublicforum@gmail.com.
Today, we'll be interviewing Natalie Cline. Natalie is a candidate for U.S. House of Representatives for the state of West Virginia. And welcome, Natalie. We are delighted you could join us this afternoon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is great.
And you're an MOV resident, right?
Yeah, I guess is Wheeling still technically Mid-Ohio Valley along the river?
Yeah.
Well, we're still northern Panhandle, but I don't know if you can see the river. But I'm from Williamstown originally.
You're native of the MOV. You go. I knew there was a tie-in somewhere.
We're still on the river.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, with that, let's dive right in. Give us your best 1-minute introduction pitch speech.
Well, thank you for having me here today. It's great to see faces that are not my husband's or my child, even though I love them both very much. Hope you're all staying safe and healthy. My name is Natalie Cline. I'm running for U.S. Congress, and I'm running for our healthcare, our people, and our jobs. I would love to have your support.
All right. Well, that was great. You kept it at a minute or less. That doesn't happen usually. So, Natalie, all candidates are different and come with different backgrounds, skills, knowledge, experiences. What do you have that you feel sets you apart from the other candidates?
Well, a lot of people know that I have a strong STEM background. I have 2 master's degrees, and I've taught at both WVU and George Mason University. And right now I work as a computational linguist for a company in the DC area. And we specialize in making software that helps find the really important things that different customers are looking for inside of data. And it automatically pulls that information out of data for them. A lot of our customers are in the U.S. intelligence industry or government agencies or law enforcement. So the software that we're creating really helps them to be able to combat terrorism, fraud, money laundering, combat drug trafficking, things of that nature. My background has always been a strong educational background. I'm highly analytical. And I think when you combine that with someone who is always fighting, I feel like I've been a fighter since day one, and also someone who's a mother and is fighting for their child's future. I think you have a good candidate.
So that sounds like it might answer the next question. What's your main motivation that made you decide that 2020 was the time to step up and make the run for office?
Yeah, my background doesn't suggest that this is something I would ever do. That's for sure. But in 2016, my husband and I actually moved back to West Virginia from the DC metro area with our son, who was 2 years old at the time. We wanted him to experience the West Virginia that we experienced growing up here in the 80s. We were only gone for about 5 years, but it really did feel like such a culture shock when we came back, and it still does. It's not the same West Virginia that we left. And I just couldn't stop thinking, how am I going to be able to look my son in the eyes when he's a teenager and tell him that I didn't do something about it or fight to change things, and not just, fight to change a policy or have some type of influence or power, because that's not it. That's not it for a lot of candidates who are running right now. It's fighting to make sure that their cohort has a future and one that can be in West Virginia. So I'm running to represent the counties in West Virginia, but I also want to be that advocate for Appalachian counties across the country who have been forgotten for far too long by representatives who are in it just for political power and a political career.
Mm-hmm. So Natalie, what do you think is your wow factor? What is the one thing that if someone knew that about you, they would say, wow, I'm going to vote for her?
You know, I think it's that people understand I care. Mm-hmm. And that's hard to find anymore. I actually care about everyday West Virginians. I am an everyday West Virginian. And before the coronavirus hit us, we were traveling to all 20 counties to have in-person, face-to-face town halls and talk to people. And that's something that hasn't been done in over 10 years with our current representation. Right now, it's very trendy for politicians to hold virtual town halls. And I'm talking about pre-coronavirus. Right now, we have to. But holding these types of town halls really gives the speaker the opportunity to control the conversation. And you don't always know who is going to show up at your in-person town hall, what question they're going to throw at you. But that's what our people deserve. They deserve to have that opportunity to put their politician, their representative on the spot and demand an answer. And it's a little bit more difficult to do in a virtual format like this. I know it's going to be like this for a while. So one of the other things that we've been doing is, I spend time each week just calling people. I have my list, just like every other politician. We have our list of people that you go through. You're asking for donations sometimes because they're grassroots campaigns, not taking corporate money, and you have to get there. But just as importantly, we have to check in on people and find out how they're doing. This is a brand new situation, and it's something that the majority of West Virginians have never had to face before. So it's important to check in on their health and their mental health and coordinate different efforts if they need it. If they need a volunteer to bring them groceries or a mask. That's one of the things that our campaign did is we did 3D printing. We still do some 3D printing. So we were 3D printing masks and other personal protective equipment for first responders, and even just some people who are unable to maybe order a mask online or go to a store and buy this type of equipment. So I think that the most important thing any candidate can do is actually have conversations with voters. You want to represent them, you need to actually talk to them. So I think that's our wow factor. You don't see that very much anymore.
So if you're elected, tell us one thing you really want to accomplish during your term in office.
When I am elected, I actually would love to pass our first policy proposal. So we have many policy proposals. We have lots of plans because I believe anybody should go to Washington empty-handed. If you want to fight for your people, you better be prepared. But my baby in all of this is called the Family Reinvestment Act. And it's a way to help our healthcare system, but it's kind of specific to areas like West Virginia that have been deeply impacted by the opioid epidemic. And it doesn't have to just be in response to the opioid epidemic, and the coronavirus has really brought to light how something like this can be necessary. So the Family Reinvestment Act will work like an emergency response system, much like FEMA does. But it'll be for social and medical crises. And what it will do is, instead of watching our medical facilities close, which our district alone has had 4 close within the last 6 months, and there's been no response to this, and there was nothing that could have prevented it, which is a huge issue in its own. But what this will do is it will help make sure that we have medical clinics and mental health and rehabilitation centers and food banks opening in our communities. But one of the biggest caveats of this, and this is going to be like my ride or die caveat, is we must also be implementing additional school nurses and mental health programs and food banks in our public schools to help take care of this generation that too many of them are affected by this opioid epidemic at home, either living with, grand families or addicted parents. They need to be able to go into a food bank and get food and like personal hygiene products without stigma. Their teachers should not have to be packing the lunches for them and coordinating with bus drivers to make drop-offs at bus stops so that they have meals. But we also need to be taking care of the mental health and health of these kids, because also too many of them, the only time they get to see a medical professional is when they're at school. So we need to make sure that not only are they educationally equipped when they graduate, but that their overall health is taken care of as well.
Well, Natalie, this is a long question here. So you as representatives to Congress, no surprise, they represent the people of the United States in our national government. So there are different theories about how this representation should work. One theory is that the representative is elected by the people to serve the people of the state, and they're only in Congress to carry out the wishes of the people. Mm-hmm. The second theory is that people elect a representative whose judgment they trust, and they leave it up to the representative to vote for whatever they think is right. As someone who's aspiring to be that representative, what is your view on this? Which theory do you incline toward?
It's a great question. And it's definitely a question people need to be asking themselves when they vote. I don't necessarily think that there is a hard line as to one or the other. However, I need to preface that with our representatives have a responsibility to have discourse with their constituents. So if you have a representative who is purely partisan or is voting outside of the best interests of their constituents, they need to be held accountable. The constituents should be demanding that they have discourse with their representative, that they are communicating with their representative and understanding why their representative is not voting in what they feel is their best interests. And if they are not satisfied with that answer, then it is time to go. I think you might be seeing a trend here with a lot of my answers. The open communication, in my opinion, is key. And I do think that along with having in-person town halls frequently, as a candidate, our representatives need to be having in-person town halls with their constituents while in office. That gives you the opportunity to find out what your constituents are actually screaming about outside of social media. You can actually continue a discussion. You may get surprised with the questions that you have because it is in person and not in a virtual setting where the entire discourse could potentially be controlled by the politician. So I don't think that there is a clear-cut answer to that, but there absolutely needs to be communication between them. And, constituents may find that, a representative's rationale is on point and correct, but they will not know if you're not talking to them.
Communication is definitely key. What are the top 3 laws or policies that you would like to see Congress enact?
Number 1 is, my baby, the thing that I'm living and breathing, which I mentioned before, which is the Family Reinvestment Act. I think that a lot of Appalachian counties across the country can benefit from something like that, and we have a responsibility to start taking care of the next generation so that the same thing doesn't happen to them. And personally, I feel that a lot of the opioid epidemic problem has been influenced by our government's decisions. Too many times pharmaceutical industries get better treatment than our people do. So we, in turn have a responsibility to start taking care of them. Along the same lines, healthcare, be it Medicare for All or Medicare Plus program, something has to happen. In West Virginia, we have a twofold problem. Not only can we not afford it, we can't access it. So we have to start doing something now, and we have to do it in a way that is not partisan. You cannot just go and start dismantling healthcare that is helping millions of people without a plan to replace it. You don't like the current plan? Fine, work to improve it, but don't take it away. It is not perfect. Nothing is perfect, but your job is to improve the quality of life of your people. And number 3 is actually broadband access. Coronavirus has really highlighted how important broadband is for all of us. And in West Virginia in particular, you know, we've been talking for a long time about how broadband should be treated as a utility. In light of this pandemic, I think that it would be cognizant of our federal government to champion making sure that broadband is actually a utility and overseeing those last mile connections to the households that don't have access to it, to make sure that those connections are not being implemented through monopolies. And with this, I would also like to add, you know, another piece of another piece into that bill, where I would be saying that public school kids and public school teachers could also apply for vouchers based on their financial ability to be able to pay for that broadband access. We need it in our public education anymore. My kid has been, you know, even though he's in preschool, he's been having his preschool classes via Zoom. Not everybody can afford the broadband access that they have, and not everybody has broadband access. So it's time that we do something about that.
So, Natalie, we're often our harshest critics.
Yeah.
This is a 2-part question. What do you think is your worst quality? And what do you think is your best quality?
My worst quality would probably be obsessing over things. I will, you know, hammer something to death, and that can be quite annoying. My best quality is probably how analytical I am. And, you know, and I think that goes hand in hand with being obsessed about things, where I will pick something apart to death as well.
All right.
Well, with that, we'd like to get to know Natalie, the person, not the candidate. If you had to narrow it down, what's your favorite single thing or place in our state? And not the people. We know, we love West Virginians.
Absolutely.
They're not a thing or a place.
That's why we moved back. Probably Dolly Sods. Even though it's not in this district, Dolly Sods is just so incredibly beautiful, and it's just so unique for something this far south. It's so varied. I mean, I just feel like when you go up there, you're in a different world.
All right. So as a person, again, not a candidate, what are your personal core values?
Communication, open communication. Realizing now that, you know, that theme is definitely ringing true here. Open communication, personal integrity. I have to be able to sleep at night. Those are my 2 big ones. I mean, I can't get through life without maintaining those 2.
So what are you as the individual passionate about?
Being creative. I know that's weird to hear from somebody like, you know, who's a computational linguist. But I am a very creative person, and I, you know, every couple of years pick some kind of new creative outlet that I just have to have a creative outlet in my life, and go forth with it. Right now it's been oil painting. So I haven't been doing nearly as much of that as I used to do. But in the past few years, it's been oil painting. That's my outlet. But I'm not terrible at it. I'm not terrible.
That may tie into my next question. What do you enjoy doing on your off time?
Yeah, oil painting. Most of my off time anymore, especially because I feel like my off time, you know, ends up being campaigning. But most of my off time now is dictated to me by my son, Teddy. So we do what he wants to do. He's the boss in off time, and that usually revolves around something superheroes. He just turned 5. So we play outside a lot. We watch everything superheroes that's age appropriate for him that we can. And I do get a chance to garden every once in a while, but Teddy, he helps. He helps a lot. You can tell when you look at my garden.
We just made a plot because my 10-year-old says she wants to have a garden, and I talked to my dad about it, and because I grew up gardening with my dad. He said she'll get over that really quick.
Yeah.
So what's most unique? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just saying I have a couple more years of him wanting to help.
Yeah.
And then that's gone.
It's still fun to dig in the dirt right now.
Yeah.
What's the most unique about you as a person?
I think just the fact that I am so analytical and into STEM and the sciences that I also have to have this creative outlet, and I feel like I have to master whatever it is that I'm learning how to do. You know, years ago I learned how to crochet, and I did that for years until I was like, you know, I felt like a crochet master, and I could, you know, make baby blankets for all of my friends and the cute little hats for their kids, you know, and stuff like that. And then it became oil painting, and I've been doing that for a few years now, to the point of like I can actually paint a face and it looks like a person. So just this desire to master something creative when my world revolves around, you know, computer code.
Well, with that, we've come to the end. We've enjoyed talking with you. We'd like to give you a few minutes to tell us and voters anything else you feel like we missed or that we need to know, including how to get more information on your campaign, how to get involved, how to get in touch with you, to communicate, how to donate, etc.
Great, thank you. So I am a native West Virginian. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a woman working in STEM, obviously creative, and I'm focused on putting West Virginia first. I'm a strong advocate for healthcare, public education, and small businesses, and I want more than anything for my son, your kids, your grandbabies, to feel like they have the choice to stay here when they are grown. I'm always available. I will always talk when it's safe, face-to-face or on the phone, or, you know, in a virtual setting like this, I'm happy to. On my website, you also can find a little widget that we have where you can actually click a day and a time that's good for you to set up a call with me, and it'll send me an email saying that we're going to have a phone call at this day and time, and it'll just be you and I, and you can talk about whatever you want. I'm also online everywhere. So I think you can see this behind me. I wrote on the whiteboard behind me. My website is www.nataliecline4congress.com, and 4 is spelled out F-O-R. We also are on Twitter, and it's at Natalie Cline, WV is my Twitter handle. You can also find us on Facebook. You know, it's just on Facebook, search for Natalie Cline for Congress. You'll find the page. We do a lot of our communication on social media and try to feed that back through the website so you can find anything you need from any of those sites. You can also donate. So our campaign is a grassroots campaign. We are not taking corporate cash. I want to represent you, not a corporation. So with that, we do rely on donations to do things like have signs, continue to have virtual town halls, and have a great social media game so that we can actually get our message across to all of the voters in all 20 counties. So you can make donations online. There are donate buttons everywhere. It'll take you right to the Act Blue, and you can, you know, just simply put a credit card in. We also accept checks, and the address should be online as well for you to find to mail checks if you want to do that. And we do a town hall, you know, at least once a week with some group or organization. So we try to make sure that we update that. And when we can, if there's a recorded town hall that we can post online, we'll post that there so you can watch those even after the fact if you didn't get a chance to attend. So thank you all very much for this. Thank you for watching this. And just make sure you vote. However you do it, just vote.
All right. Well, Natalie, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us and put out this information for the voters. We appreciate it. And everyone, remember, Wash your hands.